Hi, welcome to the session. My name is Anne-Marie Rochford. I'm a high school English teacher over here across the road at FCI. I teach 9 to 12 English. I actually just came out of a classroom just before the session, so I'm kind of fresh off the job, and hopefully be sharing with you some of the experiences I've gained, observations I've made, the research I've done, and some information with you today. My session is called The Importance of and Value of Teaching Local Authors. I have a selection for you today. I have them arranged here on the table in Cranberry. I also have some of the authors listed. If you would like a list of the texts and authors, I would be very happy to email them to you after the presentation. But that's what the people here are able to see as well. So the theme was Manitoba Learning for the conference, and I felt it's very important to kind of be teaching local authors and also using them as a resource in the classroom, and it's important for the students to see that as well. So some of the authors are listed there. Beatrice Colton is well known for having taught April Raintree, which is kind of, a lot of the kids come to school with, or come to high school, oh, we read The Outsiders and are all excited about that. And the northern version of Outsiders sometimes, oh, we've all read April Raintree. So it's kind of nice that they're coming with that sort of background. They have previous knowledge of some of these authors and some of these texts as well. Rosanna Deerchild is originally from South Indian, has called Thompson home and is now in Winnipeg, is quite involved in not only writing but producing. She does a radio program as well. She's written a collection of poems that I have here for you today. Thompson Highway, originally from Brochet. We have actually taught a number of his relatives in the school. A playwright, he's actually an accomplished concert pianist, which is kind of an interesting mix, and an amazing speaker as well. David Robertson, I don't have any of his texts here with me today. He's a graphic artist, does graphic novels, which, in kind of the context of, a lot of student interest, is they're very popular as well. Ian Ross, I have two of his texts here today, a very accomplished playwright. And the students, rarely do I come across an author, or rarely have I come across an author that the students just relate to so quickly, so easily, so deeply. And there's, I found a lot of success using Ian's books as well. I was trying to get him here to talk to the students. With my work on some committees, I've tried to get him to do conferences with students and workshops. He's impossibly hard to get a hold of. Even people who work with him in the drama kind of scene have said, oh yes, no, I never get, I can't, I actually have to track him down. But fantastic, even his texts alone are amazing. Gordon Sinclair has written Cowboys and Indians. He has journalism background. He's from Winnipeg, dealing with a very hot topic, and also a lot of the racism around the death of J.J. Sinclair in Winnipeg a few years back. And Nerio too, which is, I'm a big fan of sometimes the unorthodox. I think unorthodox texts have just as much of a place in high school English or the high school setting or education as maybe our more tried and true novels and things like that. Nerio too is a spoken word artist. He also does visual art, or graphic art. He also does breakdance as well. He's kind of a man of many talents, and he is based out of Winnipeg. I believe he's Filipino as his background, but just amazing, fantastic. I was actually trying to embed some video of some of his spoken word poems, but it didn't happen in the PowerPoint. But you can look him up, and it's fantastic, and the kids love that sort of stuff, the spoken word. So there are many other authors. Obviously, Manitoba has quite a rich writing community, but these are just some of the ones that I'm going to be referencing today. There is a very thriving writing community in Flin Flon as well. You have Harry and Glenda Hobbs. You've in Winnipeg, or in southern Manitoba, Miriam Taves is somebody writing very strongly from a different cultural perspective as well. Margaret Lawrence, of course, but some of these are the texts that I've used that I'll be speaking about today in my 45 minutes that I have. And of course, I can't forget as well, I do have a couple of anthologies here of our own students or authors as well. So if you're looking at local authors, our kids are authors as well. These anthologies were put together after the Language Arts Festival that's held yearly. I'm on the committee that plans it. This year will be in Thompson, I believe. And our students are actually now published authors as well. So I think that counts as local authors too. So I think the first question is, how do we get to this? I think if you're going to talk about text, you have to kind of have a goal in mind. So it's not just, here's the book, turn the pages, let's do some reading. And then sometimes people go for the old chapter questions or comprehension questions. What did you just read? What did this character say? I think really to be properly teaching a text and for the kids to get something out of it, this needs to be more of the end result that we're kind of aiming for and shooting for. So what is this? This is engagement. This is, active, participative citizenship in action right here. I'll have to say that the pictures that you see in this PowerPoint were taken when I was doing the qualitative research for my master's degree a few years ago. And I had the students doing various activities and kind of responding and kind of getting back to me on what they felt about their involvement and the value in doing some of these things. So I'll be talking a little bit about the visuals today as well. So at the heart of education, I think this is what we should be aiming for. These students are basically involved in a demonstration, an anti-racism demonstration, and that is before the new residence was built. That's actually just outside these doors. I think you can actually see the door behind the "We All Bleed the Same Color" sign, the orange sign there. That is the door here to the Area 4 office. So it was held at a break between classes, and students were involved in speeches. They handed out pamphlets. There were announcements made. The students generated all these, and then they actually, did some active work as well. So the benefits and value of teaching text by local authors. These are some 3 key points that I'm going to be looking at in the presentation today. They need to be relevant and relatable. They all act as a catalyst for discussion, that goes without saying, and they are the starting point for critical and creative thinking, as well as engagement, because if you're doing critical and creative thinking, then the natural byproduct of that, or natural product of that, is that there will be engagement, there will be learning, there will be change in the person as well. If you're interested in the notes on the presentation or any of these slides, I can also email them to you as well. So staring down a Monday morning, so what does this mean for in the classroom? And I will also, for people who are not classroom teachers, speak a little bit at the end about what does this mean for people at the administration level or the consultant level, as well. But in the sense of from a classroom teacher, because that is my only perspective, I can't speak from what I don't do. In order to apply this to practical planning, consider the following. So what is a text? A spoken word poem when someone stands up behind a microphone and from memory gives a speech, expresses a poem, that is a text. Photograph, we have some beautiful ones hanging in here by Hans Arnold, the local, Winnipeg photographer. Those are texts as well. So it's not just, I think we need to make sure our view of what a text is expanded to include all these different varieties, not just the plays and novels and poems, the genres that, kind of are the meat and potatoes of the English program, but also these other ones, maybe some unorthodox ones as well. What text will I use? I always say it depends on the clientele. Know your kids. We have a lot of adapted and modified students, but we also have some classes that are, there's more males or more females. Also taking into consideration their background. For example, this year I'm teaching a very close relative of Dennis Strongwell, so I might not bring up Nowhere to Run, or I might not necessarily teach that book or type of book if she's in my classroom. I have it on a shelf so she knows that, we respect and honor this relative of hers, but we might not, you have to be very careful and kind of feel out your clientele. This year my goal was, I was on a mission to find texts that appealed to young male readers, because I think the research shows and the statistics show that it's hard sometimes to get guys to read. And I think I hit some gold this year. One of the texts I've done, it's not a local author, but it is the woman who wrote The Outsiders. She has written other texts, and I kind of hit gold with one of them. So you got to be aware of who's in your class, what are the needs, what are the interests as well. And how will I use it? So what am I going to do? Am I trying to reinforce their understanding of plot? So we're going to look at character, go through those elements. Or am I trying to kind of provoke some thought? Am I trying to address some stereotypes that I've heard coming up in the classroom? Because our students are from very small communities. Their frame of reference is maybe not as big as students who have had the benefit of being in other schools or in other communities. And so, what am I actually trying to do with the text? And that's how, the kind of process that you go through when you're selecting a text, when you're buying resources for the school, or when you're actually teaching it to the students in the classroom. Creating safe places is one of the most important things I think we need to do in classrooms as well, schools, campuses as well as classrooms. Creating safe places, and I don't mean safe as in let's lock everybody down and cover everyone in cotton and keep everyone closeted. Open and secure, and I know that sounds a bit like an oxymoron. It's open and secure, but to realize that to set the stage, do some work with the students, to encourage them to kind of share what their previous knowledge is, what they're bringing to the classroom. And respect and validate those experiences, but also provoke students and kind of challenge them as well. So it's an open environment, but it's also secure. So what they have to bring, they're going to be provoked and challenged to bring it and to kind of share it, but to know within these walls, within these fences, within this community that we have on our campuses and our schools, that it is safe to do so. And I think that's important. There is some activation that needs to occur. For example, in The Bereaved of Light, which Ian Ross is a play by Ian Ross, very, very unique play, brings together white characters, Aboriginal characters, and black characters, all in the woods and the bush of Northern Ontario, which is kind of an interesting mix. You need to do some background because many of our students here in Northern Manitoba do not have an understanding or previous knowledge about Black history in Canada. So that's some activation that you need to do, some background work and to set the stage. And some of these other texts you might want to do some work with, what is the CFS system all about? You might want to do some more identity or home. What do these things mean? What do they mean to the students? So you don't just start cold. Here's the book, let's read. We're on chapter 1. There's no cold starts. It's not nice for a vehicle and it's not good for kids. You kind of have to warm them up to things. So the idea of encouraging and challenging, as we'll get on to in the next slide as well, you need to help them negotiate the learning. It's not just going to happen, magically on their own. And also, I think it's important to challenge their stereotypes. So you have to validate and respect what they bring, but then if it's stereotypical or if it's misinformed or wrong, you need to challenge that in a certain way that shows the student respect, but also no, that's not what we call that group of people. That's actually a racist term. You are incorrect in that. Let's find out more about this. So for example, my grade 12s right now, they're looking at, they're researching the Muslim religion because it came up in a text, and all their minds jump to a certain stereotype that is kind of bandied around about Muslim people and their involvement in certain activities. And so I said, well, okay, let's get to the heart of this. This is your challenge. Let's find out more about this. That's coming from text. I think you need to provoke students. I strongly believe that. I think if they're let to just kind of sit in the chair safely, their mind tends to wander, they kind of zone out, they disconnect. You really have to kind of keep them on their toes. And they want to know, they want to be challenged. They do want to be challenged. So you can focus on characters that fit stereotypes. Say, what's so stereotypical about this character? You can focus on characters that buck the stereotype. Say, how does this person go against? Why is it unsettling to you because this person is not what you're expecting? You can relate conflict or settings to your own experience. For example, North End Love Songs, we've got Katharina Vermette from the North End of Winnipeg. We have students who've lived in the North End of Winnipeg. They share their experiences, and in the poems, they will have some of that reflected back to them. They'll say, I know, I heard those sirens too, or yes, I remember walking down the street to that park, or I lived on that street. This is A Small Northern Town by Rosanna Deerchild. It's set in Thompson. A lot of our kids have gone to school in Thompson, lived in Thompson, have visited Thompson, and they appreciate some of the stuff that comes out in the poems. the organic nature of teenagers, and this was kind of at the root of the research that I did for my master's, the organic nature of teenagers is such that they are naturally very keen observers, and they know exactly when something is wrong, when something is inconsistent, when something is not right, or there's inequality. They will see that right away. They are the best. They will sniff that out, they will see it, and they will react, because they will also kind of sympathize with the underdog generally or usually, and so when you're dealing with a text that deals with racism, or that deals with abuse, or that deals with people just not getting a fair shake, they really do relate strongly to those types of texts and to those types of characters, and then you can work through a process with them, and they will take something from that text, and they will grow as people, which I think is very important. I think is part of why we do the job that we do, I hope anyway. So relatable texts, like I said, some things might seem outside, like Bereaved of Light, deals with white slavers, as well as an Anishinaabe man in Ontario, and an escaping slave. And so it might seem kind of, it does stretch kind of their frame of reference a little bit, because they're not familiar with like the Black history in Canada, the movement of Black people from the States into especially Eastern Canada. So it does challenge them a bit, but then it gives them that relatable place of, well, I know about slavery, I've heard about that, and I know that's wrong, that's not cool. Okay, so you're getting that and that connotative or response to it as well. But then they're like, oh, Anishinaabe, oh yeah, those are our people too. So it's kind of a neat mix, and you can use those kinds of things to go through the text. And a question that was on the provincial exam that we just marked on this provincial exam, the January one, was looking at texts and how they affirm or challenge students' understanding of human behavior. And I think a good text, if you've chosen a good text and you've presented it in a certain way, it should do that. They should have their ideas or their opinions challenged or affirmed. It shouldn't just be a neutral, beige, vanilla experience. It shouldn't be. Either the text is not being handled properly in the classroom by the teacher and taught properly, or it's maybe not the text for them. It's outside the frame of reference. They're like, I have no reaction because I got nothing to bring to this, and I don't know. Okay, so it should always affirm or challenge. There should always be a reaction. There should always be something that happens. It's very important to begin with the individual. I think that all the research on teaching and education confirms that you have to start with the individual. Learning will not take place if what is being kind of thrown their way does not connect or does not kind of synth or mesh with something that's already there. It just won't. It'll just kind of bounce off and keep going. So that's why these relatable, current, or relevant texts, local authors, is very important. So knowledge and experience, what do they bring to the table? I do this through class discussions, brainstorms. I've actually, I think a previous slide showed, I do it with opinion lineups. So I actually draw a line simply with the markers, no big preparation involved, across two whiteboards. I put, agree, disagree, whatever the case may be, and I get them to actually physically stand where they believe they would fit on a spectrum, given a certain topic. And so it's a kinesthetic thing. So if you've got kids with multiple intelligences, a lot of these activities that I've done will hit those different intelligences, which I think is very important. It's not the, heads bent over paper, quietly, furiously writing day after day in an English class. That's not how I teach. But just getting them to physically stand. So they have to commit to, I believe this, and I'm standing here. And I think that's very powerful when they actually oh, and you're way over there. And you're kind of in the middle because you don't know how, you haven't made up your mind or you don't know enough. Or if physically getting up and standing sometimes is too much, or it's early in the semester and you haven't created that open, safe space yet because the kids are like, oh, I don't know if I should trust this person, or they don't know you. You could do the Post-it note, write what you feel, slap it up there, scurry back to your desk, and just kind of wait and sit back and see. And it's still a very visual and very visceral thing because they can see. Right? They see where people are. So they need to work out from the self. That's just basic. They come to the class. They are kind of these, I don't say vessels, that's so cliched, but they bring a lot They bring a lot. Each and every one of them bring a lot, and you kind of have to. And so my job as a teacher in the classroom, and if we're ordering resources or if we're consultants and we're kind of saying, okay, what's going to work for this program? How can we help our students achieve success? How are we going to relate these texts? How are we going to accomplish these outcomes with these texts, with these human beings that walk in our door? And I think that's important, but the key is to start from the self, to start where the kids are at, start with who they are. And having said that, you have a young person, teenager comes in, sits in a chair, there they are in the chair. You've got a book, kind of inanimate object sitting on a shelf somewhere, all ready to go, all numbered up and stamped with your school stamp. How do you bring the two of them together? How do you work with the two of them together to end up with something like this? This is Wilbur Wood. I think he's in town, has a young family in town. He was not a strong English student. He wasn't a strong student, full stop. He was here for the hockey, which, hey, here for the hockey. And he didn't do a lot in English, and that's okay. And when we were doing the anti-racism demonstration, everyone was able to take parts based on their comfort and their ability. So some people were very good at the automated office end of it, and I'm going to make brochures, and they made these beautiful brochures, with the trifold, and they were so proud of them, hand them out. We had people doing announcements because they like to hear themselves talk. We had people making signs because they're very creative, all painted up. We had people stopping people in the hallway because they like that interaction. And I said, we need someone to read a speech. I said, I'll get the megaphone from the gym. We need someone to read the speech. And this is all basic. This is all, by the way, the anti-racism demonstration was something that students wanted to do. I'll say that again, students wanted to do. I asked them, what do you want to do with this? Because it's a pretty intense book. Cowboys and Indians by Gordon Sinclair. So this is all kind of stemming from that particular text. They wanted to do this. They wanted to kind of, anti-racism, we need to stop racism. And again, you might think, well, anti-racism demonstration on a campus of other Aboriginal students, maybe the audience, but you know what? It was a start. They got out there and they did something. They brought attention to something, and they kind of reinforced what other students are feeling too, that we need to end this type of thing. So Wilbur actually he volunteered to do the speech. And of course, in my head, I thought, really? And out loud, I said, right on. Okay, you should be at least half a page. You're in grade 12 or whatever it was. At least half a page. That gives you about 30 to 45 seconds of speaking time. And the megaphone, I said, you can stand with whatever your cronies that you want to for moral support, and off you go. And he did it. And there he is, and it was minus 25, I think, and he's got his gloves, Andrea's gloves on, I think, because his hands, the pink, right, because his hands were so cold, and he's got the speech, and he's reading it with a megaphone. He was facing the garbage shed, but he was reading it with the megaphone. So people could hear him, and what's his voice, like, where is this coming from? And those were his words and his speech, and people got to hear that. So, pretty powerful. So the connection between, using these local authors, using these locally developed texts, often on, dealing with local events, and I say local as in Manitoba. And then, this is kind of what you end up with students that are provoked by this, that are kind of connecting to this, they're relating to this, and then they feel they need to do something. Okay, because it gets to a point you're full of it. Now, what do you do with it? Right? Because it was a difficult text to read. It was very difficult for the students, and for anybody who's read it and gone through the events of that time. So through the various activities I've done, and you'll see a picture of a debate as well, and the anti-racism demonstration. And it doesn't have to be unorthodox and kind of big and scary like that, because I know some teachers who are just assigned in English for one semester, or who it's not their background, or it's totally not their teaching style to be so out there. There's different levels. Like I said, from an opinion lineup, I do silent debates. I was in Winnipeg giving a presentation, and a Hutterite woman came up and wanted my notes on how to do a silent debate. So if it works in a Hutterite school, It will work anywhere. I mean, if you're looking at parameters and, what your administration is willing to let you do, I mean, I think all those have to be taken into consideration as well. What's comfortable for the school, what's comfortable for the campus. But the bottom line is create an opportunity for an experience, and I would say invite a situation, invite a situation, we'll just keep it neutral. So things like debates are those kind of situations. Things like the demonstration. Debate is more structured. It's still a little bit out there because you're dealing with the unknown. There's no script. The demonstration is completely unscripted. So that's kind of, some people are like, oh my gosh, it's going to be hard, because they go out there. Physically, they go out there. So you got to trust they're not hitting people's signs, not stopping cars. You do have to trust. But one thing I found is students are really good about this. I had one demonstration where one of my boys from Moose Lake, there happened to be a bus parked outside. It just happened to be there. The driver was in here, the Area 4 office, discussing something, and he thought it would be great and a great statement if he took his sign that he had and went and lay down in front of the bus and looked like he was about to be, eradicated, because of his stand on some issue. And I took a picture, and I could make sure I gave that to him so he could feel that I lay in front of the bus, even though there was no driver, it was completely shut off. He felt that that there was a powerful statement, that I'd be willing, even in jest, I would do that, for this cause. And I think that's important. So they all get to a point where if you handle these texts and you work through the processes and the characters and the conflict and kind of really pulled out themes, that they get to a point where like, okay, we got to do something about this. And it doesn't have to be, intense and life-changing and something that would be on the news. It doesn't have to be something like that. It can be something simple as just an open discussion. I had my grade 10s the other day. I kind of had chart paper out because some of them don't feel comfortable if you just say speak. They're like, oh my God, don't make me do that, right? But I said, okay, well, write things down for each of these headings. And then we just kind of morphed into this kind of informal conversation. It was very honest and just kind of open, and it was interesting. It kind of followed where the student needs were. And again, unscripted, no answer key, just let's see what people need to talk about today. This particular picture here is actually, I call them the genuine experiences. The anti-racism demonstration, it was kind of on campus. It was the kids that really structured it themselves. But then to get them involved in things like this is the Take Back the Night march in Flin Flon, put on by the Women's Resource Center and Shelter, just to kind of make a statement and support women who have been in abusive relationships, and also some of the women that we've lost due to abuse and various other things. So, as the students said, we want to do this, I said, here's an opportunity. Are you guys interested? I was minus 35. It was crazy cold. We had to keep running around the corner to Subway to warm up. But we listened to the speeches. They had made signs on their own time. They said, we want to make signs. They don't have to make signs. It's just a solidarity march. No, we have to make signs. If we're going to walk somewhere, we want a sign to carry. I said, okay. It was freezing. They came out. We walked down the street. The two boys in the back, Mingitha McDougall and Jason Harper, were actually interviewed by the local news in Flin Flon. There was a chant that one of the Women's Resource Center, the coordinator, had made up, and people were kind of going along with the chant as we walked. It was more, to bring awareness. But there weren't a lot of men. It's nice to see our young men, especially our young northern men out there. And they were just striding up the street with their signs, and they were leading the chant. I said they were the loudest voices, and I said, good for them. I actually lost track of them up the street somewhere, Main Street in Flin Flon. I said, you know what? They're doing something good. I'm sure I'll see them at some point. And it was kind of fun because we had a police escort, and for most of these kids walking behind a police car with the lights on, this is a pretty cool experience, and for a good thing, this was pretty neat. The whole street was blocked off just for them, but it felt like it, right? When you're in there, hey, for us, man, this is happening. So it was great. And again, it comes out of some of these texts where the characters deal with abuse, or they're coming from relationships that aren't so great. And it relates again to the students' experiences that they bring, which is some of the households, not so positive things going on and being modeled there. So pretty powerful in the sense of genuine, authentic. You can't